Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Our guest today is an extraordinary individual with a whole wide range of experience. Everything from investing, being a board member. He also built this company, and it was called Robley Email Marketing. He bootstrapped that company to an 8-figure exit, which he sold to private equity back in 2021. He's also been an advisor to another company. It's really cool Shopify conversion optimization software that optimizing a website without you having to lift a finger. And more recently, he's the founder and CEO of retention.com. And so Adam Robinson, I think it's fair to say that he's never been afraid to shake things up. As I mentioned, he's a serial entrepreneur. He's an expert when it comes to high ROI marketing strategies and so on and so on and so forth. Without further ado, Adam, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. You bootstrapped a company, Robley Email Marketing, to an 8-figure exit. Can you just tell me a little bit about that journey before we get into retention.com?
In many ways, it was very brutal because I was coming off of a career. I was a credit trader for 10 years. Like my roommates in Manhattan actually started Vimeo, the video sharing social media site, like in the apartment that I was living in. So I watched those guys do that as I lived this life of a high flying trader in his 20s in downtown Manhattan. And I thought that they were getting more out of their lives. I correctly assumed from my observation that they were getting far more out of their lives building something than I was, extracting money for myself out of the financial system. The financial crisis happened. They regulated what I was doing heavily, and it just became very hard to do it. The market shrank a lot of years in a row. And that's really a crappy environment to be in, just everyone getting fired. Like it was the opposite, before that. And then it's just, like as human beings, we just want to be in high growth environments. I think that's why we have kids. I think that's why we love building companies. And I had enough money to where I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure something else out. If not, I would rather be like a tour guide in a national park than do this for another 20 years or whatever. That began a long and winding, road to what eventually became an email marketing SaaS app. We figured out this data mining strategy to generate leads and sort of actively sweeping breadcrumbs off of the constant contact sort of table, if you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like we were just picking up their scraps. But it got to a sustainable lifestyle business. It was actually fairly nice, which, when I started, I thought I wanted that. Like, why would I want anything more than that? So that's what that business ended up being. But it got stuck there. It's such a hard space because there were brands like MailChimp, Klaviyo, and then this guy ConvertKit, Nathan Barry figured out this little niche of creators to make a tool for. So he figured out how to niche down in a way that, there was this community of people that was willing to jump on it. And then Klaviyo figured out a way to niche down into e-commerce and Shopify. That was unbelievable. I just had the hardest time several years in a row trying to figure out, how can I grow this beyond this initial several $1 million of revenue that we were able to come up with off of that strategy, which very quickly got capped. I would say building it while it was still growing was like the most exhilarating thing in my life up to that point. And then once it stopped, and I think a lot of bootstrapped entrepreneurs have probably felt this, it's like, no matter how much money you're making, I think that if you're just kind of cruising, you're kind of slightly dissatisfied. The rest of your life is fantastic, but like, I don't know. I'm listening to this book on tape right now, John Wooden, the legendary UCLA basketball coach. And, the guy has very simple lessons that he teaches. And one of them is just, the key to happiness is just trying as hard as you can in whatever you're doing. And I feel like these lifestyle businesses, it's like they get advertised as though it's the greatest thing ever. It's like, oh, I barely work, I'm making a lot of money or whatever. But like, man, I can tell you, it's like, there's just a little something missing to all of that. I had been trying to figure out how to get this business unstuck, focused on what this company MailChimp wasn't doing.
Sure.
And I came across this idea that someone told me was possible, that somebody could, and mind you, like if I haven't clearly articulated this, like we were a competitive product in MailChimp that helped people send email newsletters. It was a software as a service business, right? Like a
Sure.
subscription service, like very small businesses, whatever. So I knew email very well. Somebody let me know that it was possible to basically like connect the signals going on in the ad tech world to an email database. Long story short, somebody could hit your website, they could not fill out a form, and you could resolve that into a deliverable email address for the person. I thought that it was an incredible thing and set out to figure out how to do it. Took a year and a half for me to figure out how to do it. I was like, man, I had one of these other companies. Like the biggest problem is people's email list shrinking. Like if I could just,
Right.
everybody's going to want that, right? Like I could sell it to anybody with a website. Eventually, we got this product out as a feature in the first company, and people were like signing up for the ESP. It was called Robly Email Marketing. They were using the identity product, then downloading the file, putting it in Klaviyo or whatever, and then telling me it was amazing. So it's like, that's a pretty good sign that you're onto something. If it's a horrible user experience and people are still raving about it, that was what was going to be different about my email marketing app. There are 200 vendors doing the same thing. And then these dominant brands, like none of them are doing this identity thing. It was going to be what made mine grow again, right? So then it was clear that people didn't actually want to use my email tool because, quite frankly, it wasn't as good as the other ones. That was the journey of the first company. And then luckily it was like profitable enough and stable enough. And like, I had gotten the team members I needed onto my other companies. So we were able to sell it to private equity just as they still own it as part of a portfolio of businesses they have. They're all happy. The entire team is still there as of 2.5 years ago, which I'm pretty proud of. I'm most impressed that the whole team is still there and like no one has left or been told to leave. That's like a really cool deal. But it's just nice that it's still kind of the happy place that it was when I was running it. And then you contrast that to the company now. It's like I'm 3.5 years in. We're about to crack 20 million ARR. I think we're going to end the year at 50. It'll be worth $1 billion. Bootstrapped it also. But the first journey is what gave me the skill to do this, right? Like you get better every day, right? Or at least you try to. So we spun that identity product out of Robly email marketing. It was called Get Emails. And it was like a self-serve, anybody sign up, B2B could sign up, like whatever. And then 2.5 years in, we realized that big Shopify stores specifically, not above that, not below that, but like there's this slice of 50,000 stores at the top of the Shopify ecosystem that crush it with our product, never churn. We're inviting all of their friends to sign up. And now we're totally focused on them, added some other features to the feature set, sort of changed the pricing to an annual deal. And that was in September or October. And it was like, okay, this can be like a massive company. Like before that, with 6 people, we bootstrapped it to 13 million ARR with like no marketing spend or whatever. So there's a ton of cash to spend on, hiring all these people. But I was always going to be a better version of what Robly was. We hadn't honed in on the ICP. There's like a churn problem. And we hadn't figured out that it was literally the perfect product for this like small group of people. And yeah, I mean, ever since we've focused in on this one ideal customer profile, and like decided to absolutely go for it as hard as possible, it's been like the most incredible journey of my life for sure. Exactly what John Wooden said. Like I'm trying as hard as I possibly can, and like nothing could be more rewarding,
So the growth at the level and the pace that you've grown at, you have, congratulations, qualified yourself in the unicorn category. And zero financing to get to the point that you're at with zero financing is very, very rare. But growing at the pace that you've grown, our listeners right now are listening and going, oh man, that sounds awesome. But we know that growth, especially at such a rapid pace, has its own challenges as well. So talk to me about some of the challenges that you encountered by growing that fast and how you overcame them.
So I will say there's been one thing that has helped me with every single one of the challenges. And had it not gone this way, I wouldn't be going this hard in the first place. I found a guy who's currently transitioning into a full-time role as COO, but he started the transition out of CEO of another company into our COO in September of last year. And he built Zoom Info. He built Apollo.io, like hyper growth scenarios. This guy has architected many of them. He's like an old sage. He's like incredible. His name's Santosh Sharan. So I spoke to this guy one time. I wasn't even trying to get him to work for us. He wasn't looking for a job. And I went home and told my wife, I'm like, I met a guy today that like, I think I'm going to try to like be my co-CEO or something. And if he says yes, like everything will have changed for us forever. We sell into big Shopify stores. Agency partnerships are like, it's a moat. We have a new product for the ecosystem. The first mover to penetrate these agencies, you have to be 10 times better if you're number two for them to rip it out. And they just like Klaviyo is, I'm sure people have heard of Klaviyo.
Yeah.
They are the email marketing app that all e-commerce companies use, 90% market share. Like one of their plays for a moat was winning this agency partnership ecosystem. It's a third of their revenue, 33%. Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So back when we started hiring in October, I couldn't even get a rank and file professional who serviced these agency partnership relationships to answer my emails, let alone work for us. So somehow I got this guy who built the whole thing at Yotpo to basically talk me through how the whole thing works and who the key players are and give me a short list of people to try to recruit and everything else. In the meantime, the pain was so dire. Like he was, introing me to people. They were all over it. Like my whole day was just like these agency partnership calls. We ended up hiring a guy from the B2B world that one of our coworkers had worked with. And it was just clear somebody from the ecosystem. Like after he started, I wish I would have realized this before, but after he started operating, it was clear that someone who had spent 5 years building these relationships would start at a place that someone who didn't have the relationships would like not get to in 3 or 4 years. It seems like it. The recent ones have either consulted for us first or worked closely with other people that have come in. So like the confidence, if we hire an operator from the ecosystem that like has worked with someone doing a similar job before, like I feel pretty good about that, if that guy had been consulting first. So look, learning every day, we have this right now, like a big, as you can imagine, if you go from 6 people to 50, like there's no reporting, there's no, there's no rev ops. Like this is a big thing we're trying to solve right now, getting systems in place that, all rev ops. It's tough. But there's, I think, one of the Google co-founders, there's either Larry Page or Sergey Brin said it. It's like revenue solves all known problems. We'll figure this out. It's going to be fine.
But you're not only growing, you're true to your name, retaining your clients, correct?
Well, part of what was a signal of product market fit was one, we realized who our ideal customer profile was. So this one type of user wasn't churning at all. I mean, SaaS, it's all about churn. It's like, if you have high churn, you are not worth shit. Like if you have virtually no churn, like you can build a huge business because it just compounds. It's that simple, right? Like you will not have a valuable business. Like you can make a lot of cash, but like no one is going to pay a lot for your company unless it's very low churn. So we kind of always knew that we needed to like get to the point where we were selling annual deals. Diana, my co-founder, and I had this strange mental block around selling annual deals. We were telling it like self-helpish type of thing to say, but we thought that the nature of our product did not yield itself to selling annual deals to the size of businesses that we were selling to. We were telling ourselves, Klaviyo doesn't sell annual contracts. Therefore, people who use Klaviyo will not buy things on annual contracts. Once we sell to bigger companies who are used to buying things that way, they will also pay for our service on an annual contract. We sold our first 3 annual deals on October 24th, and we've sold 656 since then. 30K ACV, right? Like we just had that in our head. It was something that's totally untrue, right? But one of the things that we did was we basically realized what our ideal customer profile was. We had been testing a whole other feature set for them.
Right.
And then once it was clear that that was creating a ton of value, we bundled it all. And then I ended up cutting prices by like 2/3 basically, and then making it an annual deal with a 60-day out, which these people look at it and they're just like, I've never seen anything like this. And it produces this ROI outcome that's like totally insane. It didn't really fuck our average subscription price either, because we're slowly sort of, the ideal customer profile was much larger than our average customer size.
Sure.
6 months before or whatever. So it kind of like all worked out.
If I may interject here, so with a 60-day out, so
Yep.
what are you doing in those first 60 days to improve retention?
Just it's all working on onboarding and client success, right? Like we have, a lot of these hires, half of them are the CS department. It's a heavy-handed onboarding. It's very easy, but like we have to make sure we have a Shopify app that installs all these scripts, and then a human being has to go through and make sure all of their email flows, they all use Klaviyo. They have to make sure all of their email flows are set up like the exact right way to like make sure the product will work effectively.
Gotcha.
And we have an 85% roll rate past 60 days. So there are
Fantastic.
some people who I think we can improve on it, but like that's a really good starting point, however many months in, 5 months in. There's always going to be people who don't listen. There's going to be people who just don't do it. They're
Yeah.
like, I never got around to it, I'm canceling or whatever. I think that's pretty good. It's all about making sure the product is set up in a way to where it's being used properly, and then we correctly instruct the customer on how to look at the results and
Right.
understand the ROI that we're generating with them. That's literally it. It's just like, here's how you see that this is working and how you see how much we're paying you.
Now, did I understand correctly that one of your primary marketing drivers is to work with partnerships directly? Is that right, with partners?
Yep. So these big Shopify apps, which like Klaviyo is one of them.
Yeah.
The SMS equivalent of Klaviyo is called Attentive. There's one called a customer success one called Gorgeous. There's one called Yotpo. They're all, a third of their lead generation is this agency partner ecosystem, because all of the big Shopify stores partner with agencies to execute. They don't want to be tech people, right? They want to be product and marketing and brand and whatever else.
Sure.
So that's a really important channel.
Why would an agency choose to work with you?
It makes them look smart. There's two types of agencies that these large Shopify stores deal with. One would be an agency that helps them switch off of Magento or Salesforce or whoever else to Shopify.
Okay.
That's an implementation agency. So an implementation agency can be like, cool, I'll set you up with Shopify. Here are 5 things that you should think about. If one of them is, we can help you send out 5 times the amount of abandoned cart emails that you otherwise would with this identity plugin. They know how valuable that is, right? In some cases, like what we pay affiliate revenue also. So it's like a beautiful sort of thing, that
Sure.
a lot of them don't accept it because they don't want to be seen as recommending technology they're getting paid for. They want to be seen as unbiased and a thought leader rather than someone who takes money, but some of them take commission. But either way, if your solution is valuable enough in this ecosystem and everyone else is using it, like they will feel very compelled to include it in. So there's the people who are helping people switch, and then there's just digital marketing agencies that are helping them execute their paid, acquisition and retention strategies.
So let me ask you a question. If you were going to step into a completely other industry and you were to step in as CEO, and let's say it's doing $1 to $3 million a year, they've already kind of figured out some sort of momentum and whatnot, and now you had to grow it based on your experience from retention.com and your experience from Robly. Now, what would you do to take that business, that agency, from 1 to 3 million over to 8 figures and beyond?
So I had read this in textbooks and I had attempted to do it at my last company, but I couldn't do it. We didn't even do this as an exercise. It just became very clear to us at one point. I would try to figure out who the best customer was. And I don't know whether this is like a RevOps exercise, like figure out the characteristics that make up your absolute best customer, and then go find where you can basically get yourself in front of more of them. That would be number one, ideal customer profile, and then, building the audience of them. And then I think working on the Alex Hormozi $100 million offer for whatever you're doing is something that everybody can do. I know that heavily influential on what I'm doing, and it has nothing to do with what that dude is trying to accomplish in the world, right? I am a SaaS entrepreneur selling into like large Shopify stores. And like when I was concocting in October we bundled a bunch of stuff and cut prices by 2/3 and did an annual deal, right? Like that's not
Right.
typically what you hear from people. It's like, oh yeah, we raised prices and this. It's like, dude, like I wanted to make this thing so insane that everyone would feel stupid not doing it.
Right.
And like
Right.
it creates this buzz in the world about what you're doing. So that's what I would be thinking. And keep in mind, I wouldn't expect it to happen quickly by any means. Like this, luckily, we had really compelling unit economics the whole way up, and like the business was cash flowing really nicely. But I think agencies can cash flow pretty well. But like it kind of all came together over like a 90-day period that was like 2.5 years into the journey of
Sure.
trying to figure this out. Those are the areas that I would be focused on.
You said one thing that I think is really important nowadays with Chat GPT and whatnot. A lot of people are letting the bots do the thinking for them. They're putting something in Chat GPT and so forth. Right now, I feel like I need to continuously remind people, it's my public service announcement, my PSA, that don't let the bots do the thinking for you, because it can lead you down the wrong direction. If you take a rocket ship and you move it 1 degree off course, it's going to completely miss the moon. So there is that element of letting it help you do some thinking, but know enough to know, is it going in the right direction or the wrong direction?
Yeah, man, I love ChatGPT. I think it's incredible. And I have another thought about what I would do. Once I figured out who this ideal customer profile was, I had not done any podcasting, personal brand work, posting on LinkedIn, none of this until basically October 1st. As part of this whole ramp, I became convinced in this argument that the way to reach people is social media. They're on there to connect with people. And that is the way you create awareness of what you're doing. Like I post videos every day. When I was posting on my company page, they got a fifth of the reach, right? A person grows way faster than a brand does on these social platforms. And like, I'm not connecting it to leads generated because I don't think that's what it's doing, but I'm doing like a ton of this content creation and being, trying to be on other people's podcasts and everything else. And like I have a podcast, twice a week newsletter. I'm posting a 3 to 5 minute video every day about work in public. I like throw my financials on, like just anything. And LinkedIn specifically, I also buy into the fact that I've heard that only 1% of active users are content creators. So there's this dearth of content.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do all sorts of stuff to connect with your prospects and have them see your content. And then when you try to reach out to them, they kind of think you're a celebrity or whatever. Once I had honed in on my ICP, I would start doing that. Whether you start out with an agency that helps you start moving in the right direction, like there was this big event, a trade show in our space called Shop Talk. I walked around there for 24 hours, like a handful of people were like, oh, I follow you on LinkedIn. I watch your videos every day. Like there is like a religious level of power if you get somebody watching a video of you every day. There's like, there's a real emotional connection. They will do anything that you want them to. So I've gotten really efficient at the way that I produce it, but I would investigating into doing that very soon after you sort of had some things click with your ICP and the offer you're making people.
So I know we're pushing up against the clock. One of my favorite questions, and I think he answered this in multiple different ways, but I'm just kind of honing it down into one. Where this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast, our listeners and guests would love to hear, what is your number one best tip for taking a company beyond 7 figures?
The better product you have and the more thirsty the audience is, with the less competition, like you can do whatever you want. Take any one of those 3 things away, everything you do is going to be banging your head against the wall. I know, because that was the last space that I was in.
Sure.
Like people rated our product from a customer success perspective fantastically, but I couldn't get new customers because it was just the world was so loud and there were so many other options and they were all so great, right? Like, and then so much other spend. But with true product market fit, call it what you want, the $100 million offer, like however you want to look at that. As far as I'm concerned, if you were an entrepreneur, like that is of like importance level 10, and like the next thing beyond that is importance level 2.
Yeah.
That comes first. And then especially with beyond 7 figures, you're talking about getting into like above 10 million in revenue.
Yeah.
It's like, man, a great product will make that journey effortless. a mediocre product will make that journey something that shaves years off your life, turns your hair gray, makes you fat, like makes you divorce your wife, like all of these horrible things, right? Like a
Got it.
great product, it's like wildly energizing to everything else in your life to be on that journey.
Awesome. Now, if people want to learn more about you and your company, where do we direct them?
My handles on social are Retention Adam. On LinkedIn, it's Retention Adam. On Twitter, it's Retention Adam. Retention.com is my website if you happen to be a big Shopify store and you're listening to this. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome.
I'm
So
posting a
that's
lot in all those places.
Retention Adam,
Yeah.
and on LinkedIn, Retention Adam,
Hmm.
and as well as retention.com. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. As a reminder, for more tips, strategies, information for taking your company beyond seven figures, also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudette with my new friend Adam Robinson, and I will see you in another episode.